a discussion on NIU athletics, the Mountain West, and the future of college football. Welcome back to the Big Mountain. I am JY, and last week, Steve and I were able to sit down for a discussion with NIU Director of Athletics, Sean Frazier, to talk about their move to the Mountain West here in 2026, an overview of NIU athletics, and the future of college football. Let's get right into it. Well, we welcome to the Big Mountain A.D. Frazier with NIU. Really appreciate you're able to give us some of your time tonight.
No problem at all, guys. I'm a fan. Appreciate it. Look forward to the conversation. Long as we can keep it positive and informative. This is good stuff. Great stuff.
We're all about informative. That's what we like. That we like the discussion. We like to, hear from decision makers. And we're fortunate enough. We've had several ADs that have given us some time to chat. And I can tell you, I think you have been the most requested so far on our channel ever since the announcement came out, even before the announcement. A lot of rumors going around. And I'll tell you what, you have some great fans, and they have already reached out to me. Make sure you talk about this and make sure you talk about that. And I said, we only have so much time here, but we're going to get right into it. Again, really happy you're able to join us here for this discussion. And I'm going to go back to a lot of our questions and maybe comments are going to be related to about a month and a half ago when there was the trustee meeting where this was made official. You then did a press conference immediately after that. And a lot of great information, I think, came out of both of those. I actually listened to them live because I was very interested to see how all of this was going to go. So again, here back in early January, the Board of Trustees there approved the $2 million membership fee to the Mountain West to make it official that NIU football is going to be going to that conference here in 2026. Can you give us maybe an overall view of how that interest began between NIU and the conference and the process you went through there at the university to ensure that it really was the right decision for you at this time?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate having the platform to talk about it. I've done that on several occasions, and this is just another good resource for folks to kind of chime in and see behind the curtain. But it's interesting. You guys talk about the landscape changing at a significant rate. You do a good job at that. I've watched a number of your interviews. For us, it really, going back to 2022, where you had USC and UCLA jump to the Big Ten. That was a bit of a watershed moment for me, who's been in the business for a while now, right? And it was really good to be able to see what that looks like, but it was shocking. It was really shocking. We were at the Professional Association, NACDA, heavily involved in that organization. And just right after that, I think Commissioner Klikoff, who obviously the former commissioner of the Pac-12, was talking a little bit about his relationships and his communication with the member schools in the then Pac-12, right? So all this was happening, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, an announcement happened where USC and UCLA jumped to the Big Ten. Well, I was obviously shocked, just like a lot of folks were, and had a chance to talk to some colleagues in the Big Ten, Big 12, and just in general, as I was now going on vacation right after this was in July, and I have a window of opportunity for a vacation, and it's in that window. But I spent most of my time assembling my team and talking about, okay, this is what I've heard. This is what's happening. And guess what? It's not finished.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of sitting back. And I remember making those phone calls because I was in the desert, unmarked location, having these conversations with my team and saying, you know what, we really do need to take a review about what's going on here. And if we don't think that this is going to affect us, we're foolish. We need to plan. We need to continue to work hard to position ourselves and our branding. So it started then. And it started with us really defining who we were. And obviously, football is huge for us. Our commitment, our donors, our supporters, our board of trustees, our president. We've made a significant name for what we do in the wonderful sport of football. So we started with that, and we really started to piece together a plan of action. And what would that look like? And one of the plans that we took a look at was the military academy model of Army and Navy, and what they have done quite frankly, to a fantastic degree with having, now Army coming to the American Conference and Navy who have already been in the American Conference, American Athletic Conference, excuse me, and then being in their all sport conference of the Patriot League. And that was an interesting, intriguing concept for me, who having spent in the East Coast with a lot of multi-divisional situations where we had Division three and Division one type. I've been an AD at several of those places prior to NIU, and really saying, is that a possibility? And our research really we dug into the weeds of that, but we said, you know what? Yeah, it can happen. You got to have the right circumstance for that to happen. You got to have the right situation for that to happen, and it doesn't happen for everybody because there has been people trying to achieve such model. Now, how does that relate to the MAC? Well, let's make our home the best it could possibly be. But one thing we control that we couldn't control is the rapid change of the landscape. And the four things that really triggered us to even drill down even further on making sure our brand was recognized was obviously name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, the college football playoff expansion, and then the big one that we're all struggling with, the house settlement requirements. Any one of those, somebody could have said that was enough to make a change of some significance. Now we had them all four, excuse me, happening at a rapid rate. So as this thing went through, 2022, we saw more change, with other schools joining or leaving the then Pac-12 to the point of the Big 12 being and evolving for what it looks like. Now the new Pac-12 and now the new Mountain West. So all this is happening at the same time that we're trying to see what would be the best fit for NIU. And as I tell folks all the time, there's no such thing as standing still. You're either moving forward or you're moving back. And I think for us, it was all about making sure that we maximize what we are doing relative to football and how we are positioning our brand for our Olympic sports and what is the financial and what was the return on the investment. So a lot of work, I would say lots of work was really assessing what's the right fit. One of the big steps here were that we at some point, close to 30 something years, almost close to 40 years, we left the MAC
Right.
in our history. I wasn't here during that time, but my predecessors, they made a determination to do that for the sake of football. And again, it didn't work out. But then they had to come back. So the circumstances very different circumstances. There wasn't the house, there wasn't the transfer portal, there wasn't, NIL, there wasn't, the CFP. Yes, but at the end of the day, that was a major component of what we had to look at to make sure we were doing things based on data-driven decision making. So that I'll stop there, but that was really the genesis behind the review. It didn't just happen because all of a sudden the Mountain West and the Pac-12 had some changes in institutional behavior. It was really more about what's the best fit for NIU. Now I will say this: Gloria, our Norar, as the commissioner of the Mountain West, I've known for many years, and that did help a lot of this because having that leadership, that comfortability, that ability to know someone and what they stand for really helped. And I've watched her grow as an administrator and now FBS commissioner was a thing of beauty because she does have some significant leadership chops. I know you guys know that. So that made this a better look in to see things, as well as the number of ADs in the league that we've shared time with. So I've known a number of the ADs within the Mountain West and the Pac-12. So all that significance on top of our connectivity with our alumni base in the Southern California, Phoenix, all the areas that we touch a lot of our alumni base. So there was a lot of common themes along with our football and media market window. There's a lot of things that were checked off relative to that. So I'll stop there. I'm able to follow up on any of those questions, but that was really the genesis of how we've come to be until the conversations having, and then all of a sudden, ultimately taking the invitation.
Yeah, that's a great groundwork here, and I do have a couple follow-ups for you. I mean, I think we first have to just say we are massive fans of Commissioner Nevarez. I think she's done an excellent job. And here, hopefully in the near future, we may have some time to have a conversation with her on the channel here as well. I'm hoping. But with that, And I think this was asked of you maybe a month or so ago, and I don't need a lot of detail, but you kind of mentioned, the watershed moment of 2022, and then you looking at things, planning for things, whether you were creating opportunities or not, possibly, but then opportunities often show up, and it obviously with the Mountain West here, an opportunity did show up. Were there multiple opportunities that you were looking at here over the past few months? Or to your point there, which just with the ADs and the commissioner, the media, everything just seemed, and I say this is a win-win. I love everything about this for both NIU football and for the Mountain West. Was this just the opportunity that was just too good to be true, kind of, or were there multiple opportunities that you were engaged in looking at?
We were in a lot of the different conversations. You know, it's not lost on me that okay, the Mountain West was one. It was the best fit and continues to be the right decision based on all the data that we've collected.
Hmm.
But I've had multiple conversations, either folks calling me or just in general hypotheticals. Would you considers? I would say that in this landscape, if you're not doing that, I would argue that you're probably not doing your job. And I think that that's something that, going back, there's no such thing as standing still. We've talked about that. You're moving forward or you're moving back. And the space is very dynamic. It's constantly moving and shifting, especially right now where we're trying to see what happens, right? The G5 component. We know what the SEC and Big Ten are doing. We understand the complexity of the NIL era, transfer portal era, the house era. So these things are very dynamic. And what ends up happening is that if you do not have a place or a plan, you'll get left out. And I still think there's going to be more change. I think that this is a plan for us for sustainability and a model that works based on data. But the reality is there's going to be constant shifting until we understand and have guardrails and other types of things that need to happen to really stabilize our industry. So yes, there was multiple conversations. I know a lot of folks have been on Earth for a little bit. I'm feeling really comfortable about where I am in my space as a director of athletics. And I think it's really important and incumbent of us making sure that we position NIU for the best possibility. And I think it's important that, again, that we respect the model, we respect the industry, and to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our student athletes and our staff. So, yes, to answer your question short, multiple. And we have conversations in colleagues, and there's great people out there, and we don't get here if we don't continue to grind it out for the greater good of the enterprise.
Well, and you mentioned more change, and I want to get to that later on in our discussion. I want to hear what else you may have to say about more change in the future. But I do want to go back to a couple things that you said here, and then I want to dive a little further into the Mountain West and your fit there with that. You talked about really just doing your due diligence, doing fiscal responsibility for the university. That's something Steve and I have talked about a lot. Of course, there's always these rumors and speculation that, so and so is talking to so and so, and that's just the environment we're in. That an AD, a university president, is always doing their due diligence, always having their feelers out for the best fiscal environment for their university, and that's I think that's just the new norm now, more so than we've ever seen in the past. I do want to go back and talk about, and you focused on this somewhat in the trustee meeting, really having your football team in one conference and then the rest of your sports in another. You talked about that motto and you mentioned it earlier with the service academies, and that's something that you've seen work, I think, in the trustee meeting. You actually talked about Division I hockey, and it happens a lot there. And so I want maybe just a little bit of a follow-up on that here. I mean, why do you think that is the appropriate model for NIU? And also maybe just for any G6 program, given the football environment we're at right now.
Yeah, no, I just think that you have to think outside the box. I think just listening to my colleagues and the folks that are in this space, if you're just combined to just one model, that's not going to work. I think we've tried to be as traditional as we can, but unfortunately, that sometimes doesn't work. That's what ended up happening with the Pac-12. That's what happened with the number of other conferences that wanted to try to stick to the same model. The old Big East. I can go on and on historically. I'm a historian when it comes to that. I've been involved, with the Big Ten. When I was at Wisconsin, I saw Nebraska come into the league. I saw Rutgers and Maryland can come to the league. I've been in NIU where we've added UMass and now our move. So I do have a little bit of experience here about what that looks like in the the whole traditionalness of having all FBS institutions and maybe not having a football only or a basketball or Olympic sport only. But I think right now the landscape necessitates that we have flexibility and adaptability. And if you don't do that to kind of fit the scope, you're really going to get yourself jammed up because not everything just fits in a round peg, right? It's just not easy that way. And I think that having the flexibility and thinking outside the box, not saying no right away, but maybe, and then seeing how it works overall. So I think for me, yeah, the experience of being back east, I was the director of athletics at Clarkson University at a time where we had Division III sports and we had Division I men's ice hockey. I actually started the women's program, so we had two Division I ice hockey programs, and we had everything else Division III. I use that as a model because it's two different entities. NCAA, I don't know if they frown on multi-divisional institutions, but what ends up happening with that, you've got to think outside the box because you're at the highest level of NCAA rules and regulations at Division I. And then you've got Division III. We have a different model and a different a different plan of action as far as maintenance protocol for the program. Now, the kids are competing at that level. Just because you're Division III and Division I doesn't mean that you don't have competition and drive and determination, but the overall governance structure is differently between the two. But that having been involved in that environment, and then also at Merrimack at the time where we had Division II programs and Division I ice hockey, those are two multi-divisional places that because of that experience, this was not uncommon. And it's not uncommon in the East Coast. You can look at Johns Hopkins with the lacrosse in Division III. There's many of the institutions from where I hail from originally that this was a normal practice. So I might have had a leg up on not being myopic about one thing. Let's think outside the box. What works for us? The thing that really worked for us is that we knew that we have regional rivalries and things within our region here in DeKalb and in the Midwest. We have multiple great basketball focused leagues that are here that could be a part of our portfolio because at one point of our life here in the at NIU, we were actually a part of those leagues before we went to the MAC. So again, it took a lot of research. It took a lot of understanding, and then it took the invite to a great a football brand that could trigger a lot of these other things from a fiscally responsible and sustainable to obviously a good quality experience for student athletes, our coaches, our donors, and supporters.
Well, and what may be outside of the box to some degree now may very much be normal in short order here, depending on how things go. I have to have a quick follow up, and I think Steve does as well. I would be remiss not to ask you if there's any update regarding the other sports. Obviously, you're in the MAC, and you're going to be a member of the MAC here for the next year and a half. But as of right now, their bylaws don't allow you to stay in that conference if football's not a member. Any update there with kind of your other sports?
Yeah, no, there's no breaking news right now. I will say that there will be in the near future a breaking news scenario, but not today. Not
Okay.
today, as we relate. We're close on making that determination. We're really excited about it,
Right.
and our future is bright. That our momentum has been fantastic in this, but I feel really good on that front. The same way I felt, and I still feel really great about what's going on with the Mountain West. So yeah, I'm excited about the future.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I got to ask you a follow-up. You gave us, I mean, there was so much great stuff there. And so I got to ask you a follow-up question. I actually wasn't planning on here, just from what you talked about, the things you brought up. You mentioned your time in the Big Ten. I'm the Big Ten guy, okay?
Good.
Wise Mountain West guy, I'm the Big Ten guy. So I'm assuming when you were Wisconsin, you were working under Barry Alvarez. Was that when he was
That's
there?
my guy.
He's the
He's a legend.
Godfather.
Yes, he's the
Godfather.
godfather, and
Yeah.
I did 6 glorious years. I was a deputy for him, and he's just an unbelievable gentleman, mentor, friend. He's retired now,
Yeah.
but
Is
he's
he
just
ever really retired though? Because
no,
he's always involved in something. He's got his hand in something.
yeah, no. Coach is he's iconic, and his beautiful wife Cindy and his family, just good people. That model of football has really rubbed up against me so hard that I made sure the tree continues to grow. Is Thomas Hammock, although he was a player at NIU, that's where we met. We met at Wisconsin, and we like running the ball. We like big offensive linemen, and I would say it's Barry Alvarez ball. There's no question about that. We like it. It's what we do. I'm excited about that brand of football. It's definitely at NIU, and he has done so much for me and my family. I could talk for hours about Barry Alvarez and his influence on us. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I wasn't planning on asking about hockey tonight, okay? But with what you've been giving us already, JY and I talk all the time about how the Big Ten, when they formed their hockey league, with Penn State coming, starting their program, how that transformed the sport at the college level, and it's changed. I mean, we don't want to get into a long hockey conversation, but it's moved, the talent going from the juniors in Canada to the college level, Big Ten programs. So what you were talking about earlier, the Big Ten has created this hockey league that's perfect for hockey. So do you see that in the future? You're talking about football and other sports where you have teams in a league for one sport, and teams in a different league, and teams in a different league, where there's kind of more of a fracture, or do you see the future being just football and then everything else?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, just in true research, I was a part of the start of the Big Ten Hockey League. So I was also chair of the men's ice hockey committee that runs the national championship. So I have a lot of hockey in my blood. My wife's a Boston University grad. I'm also a University of Maine grad on top of everything else. So there's a lot of hockey that runs through me. I don't have hockey anymore. So I've had to go through a bit of a detox of that over the last 10 years since I've been at NIU. But yeah, I do think there's going to be a point where, as we take a look at football, and based on everything you see right now with the Big Ten and SEC, I'm not in those meetings. I obviously have colleagues and good people and good friends, but I do think there's going to be some type of a component where we look at football only. I do think that the process by which of flying from coast to coast and some of these other things, I think we're going to have some data sets that really speak to if this is a good thing for sports outside of football to be doing, right? So that remains to be seen at this point. That's why our model was always, yeah, we'll do the flying around with football because they already do that anyway in the non-con. We already do that. So 6 hours on a bus, 2 hours or 3 hours on a plane, it doesn't really matter to us, and the financial part of it works out based on TV revenue and the like. So for us, football only really works, but we don't know what the impact of some of these other things are going to have on some of these conferences that are flying from coast to coast. I will say that if we can get to the business of managing football a little differently than we manage everything else, I think it's a good thing for college athletics. This is not a pro model, even though we're going to a pro model in football, but everything else is going to be judged and evaluated, and we're going to have some data sets about what that has done to the overall academics of the enterprise very soon, because we're going to start seeing some data sets that talk about how is it affecting the quality of experience. We're going to start seeing a lot more of that as this kind of shakes out in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So I do believe that would be the right course of action. That was really the genesis behind us doing what we did. There was plenty of conferences that say, okay, you want to come in football, but we'd like you to come in everything else. And that was a non-starter. It's just not a non-starter for us at this evolution because I'm concerned about some of the things going on with the effects of travel and also the finances of doing that. Can that work based on the business model? For us at NIU, it just cannot work. So I think the future will tell us that. I think we'll have more data. I think we'll have more considerations. I think there's going to be a lot more that will go in as we're looking at this pro model around football, as we're paying players and doing other types of things. I think all of that will come to a head once we get some guardrails and other things in place so we can really manage this thing that we have right now.
This is episode 1 of a 2-part episode with A.D. Frazier. In part 2, that will come out tomorrow, we talk more about NIU athletics and facilities, more about the future of college football, and we asked A.D. Frazier about his comments of a joining of brands regarding the Pac and the Mountain West. So come back tomorrow, check out part 2, and we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.